You can leave that in the stream.
I just did.
This is MIP. Get woke.
Live every
18 minutes before the hour. Joining us now, the president and CEO of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson. Derrick, good morning, man. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. How you doing?
Just fine, brother. Glad to have you on board. We have some good news, I think. Their oral arguments are going to be heard in the lawsuit against DACA that the NAACP filed.
That's right. We are going. It's a hearing. They moved for a motion of summary judgment. We are aggressively pursuing this case. It's an important case. It's one of many. We're making sure that our voices are heard because, DACA is not just about people from Latin America. We have Afro-Latins. We have Africans from the diaspora who will be affected by it, some of whom are our members. And we must protect the right of humanity by ensuring that a government that make a commitment, follow through with their commitment, and not be held hostage by a tyrannical egomaniac that happened to occupy a house we call white.
So this will be tomorrow. Judge John Bates of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia will hear oral arguments in NAACP et al. V. Trump. So it did. Did the Trump attorneys? They're the ones who filed the motion to dismiss. Is that the case?
That is the case. It's a standard procedure in lawsuits. It's called surviving standing. People seek to say, well, your case have no merit, therefore asking the court that dismiss this for no merit. So a motion for summary judgment. And pretty much our position, like in any other case, said, nope, it not only have merit, we have standing, and this is a case that should proceed because it is crucial to the integrity of our laws that a decision is rendered in favor of the plaintiffs who would be negatively impacted.
So, folks, that actually takes place on tomorrow, the oral arguments. He'll also, from the press release you all sent, is going to consider whether to issue an injunction to block the rescission of DACA, or whether to side with the NAACP's argument that the ending of DACA was unlawful. Right now, the status quo from the other court, I believe, Derrick, if I have this right, is that the that DACA right now with Trump's rescission is no longer valid, and so those under the protection can remain under that protection for the time being. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Pretty much. All of this is saying that this is an issue that will be headed to the Supreme Court. You have multiple cases filed, many of which they've prevented the administration from implementing DACA. They're in different circuits, so we're headed to the Supreme Court. And very similar and different opinions at the same time. Joining our case is United Food and Commercial Workers, American Federation of Teachers. Microsoft is taking a clear position in support of our position. And so you have a lot of interest who are saying that what is taking place is un-American at best. And we're talking about advocacy groups, labor unions, corporates. We're all saying the same thing, that if this country gives a promise to individuals, in exchange for that promise, they carry out their end of the deal, we should honor that.
Right.
We are a country of immigrants, people who reside on this soil, except the Native Americans, are immigrated here one way or the other by force or decision. At some point, through their family lineage. And we should not try to remake who we are, because who we are individuals with very dynamic backgrounds and ethnic viewpoints. And that's a good thing if we manage it properly and lean into it and honor it, and not try to create the otherness of people who should not be treated less than human.
So tomorrow, those oral arguments will take place, folks, and then, of course, there'll be a press conference following. We'll hear what happens in court tomorrow. Of course, the judge probably will not rule tomorrow, but he will hear those arguments. The American Federation of Teachers will be there. United Food and Commercial Workers, as Derrick said. Representatives from Princeton University, Microsoft, and what have you. So this is good news. Getting our day in court, at least as far as the oral arguments are concerned. Also, Derrick, in the past few days, you have been critical of Ben Carson's attempt to change the mission statement of the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
You know, it is unfortunate when you have someone with the background of Ben Carson from my city of Detroit, where I grew up. He grew up in a neighborhood not too far from my neighborhood in Southwest Detroit,
right?
Who should fully embrace the values and the principles of the Fair Housing Act, the role that Department of Housing and Urban Development has played in providing African Americans and many, many, many other individuals access to quality homes, the biggest wealth creator in this country. And yet he is seeking to remove some of the basic principles from the mission of HUD.
Right.
The very focus of HUD. So it is amazing to me. And ironically, we just met with Ben Carson. We sat down and met with him a week and a half prior to this and thought that, okay, you know, despite all of the media conversations, he actually get it. He listened. We agreed on certain things. Said this makes sense. You know, this is a conversation we can have. In ACP, we're nonpartisan. We are issue focused, and our issue is improving the quality of life of African Americans and fighting against discrimination. Proactive part of our mission, improvement. Reactive, fighting against discrimination. And for someone with his background, from our community, who grew up where he grew up, to look at a department that he's the head of and seek to remove a major tenet from its function is outrageous.
Yeah. He actually is seeking, am I right, Derrick, to remove the anti-discrimination language itself that's in the mission statement, correct?
That's correct. I'm sorry, I should have led with that. It's just the frustration of you know how far we are. People say, you know, in ACP we should be nonpartisan. We are, but we should have an open mind to African Americans who choose a different political party than the majority. We do. But when African Americans choose a different political party or the same political party and remove basic tenets that have allowed us as a community to continue to progress, then that's a problem. And if that's not about political affiliation, that's about value systems.
Yeah.
And we should promote non-discrimination wherever it rears head, and make sure we put it in every mission statement.
So now, just to be clear, the language that has always been there, folks, talks about inclusiveness and freedom from discrimination. He wants to remove those words from the mission statement, as if that's hurting anybody. As if, I mean, we know our mission statements are. Those words exist, Derrick, but we still have to be sure they're enforced. He can't stand Ben Carson. He can stand and get $30,000 dining room set, but he can't stand for the words inclusion and anti-discrimination to appear in the HUD mission statement. That's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. But, this too, we shall fight and win. I always said that when we fight, we win. And every so often, we need to shake up something so people can see that we are still here.
Right.
And every so often, things change so we don't get comfortable and take the norm for granted. And I guess this is one of those moments.
Well, as a matter of fact, to quote one of our founders at the NAACP, whose 150th birthday we just celebrated, he would often say, W.B. Du Bois, sometimes you just need to fight, because even when you lose a fight, someone will know that there was a battle that occurred. that there was some blood left on the ground. So
Mark, I don't know about you growing up. I wasn't the best fighter, but I had to fight, because if I didn't, it wouldn't be a pleasurable experience. And I recognized early on, whether I lose or I won, I had some scars and bruises, and I left scars and bruises.
That's right.
So for the next fight, everybody kind of considered, do I want to go through that again?
Yeah.
Is there another way we can do this? And that's, so you have to fight just so people can course correct on how they treat you.
Correct. Now, Derrick Johnson with us, folks, president of NAACP. Also, in other news, you actually co-authored a letter signed by all the major civil rights organizations urging the Attorney General to include civil rights in the Department of Justice's priorities, Derrick.
We want to make sure we make the record clear that this AG, whether he respects the civil rights or not, that we make the record clear that we are requesting it to be included. Because we never want it to be said where no one ever mentioned it.
Right.
Or it must not be important. And so really following the lead of Cheryl Eiffel and LDF, he said, we will be a part of that because this is important. But also demonstrate that as a civil rights community, we are aligned. We recognize clearly that what the fight is, who the enemies are, and what values we must uphold.
Yeah.
And so whether it's the Advancement Project or Lawyers Committee, National Action Network, or Urban League, LDF, we stand united to ensure that discrimination don't exist, particularly as it relates to African American people and African diasporas.
On that point, Derrick, has he met with the NAACP sessions or any of the other major civil rights organizations since he's been
early on,
there
was a meeting when he first got in office.
Okay.
But I was just asked this question about meeting with the president. Would I be seeking a meeting? I would be seeking to ensure that African Americans participate in this election cycle. There is no need to get photo ops or having hollow conversation. When there is a true interest in addressing some of the systemic issues that's facing our community,
right,
or true interest in having conversations on how to advance improvements in our community, then I'm more than happy to meet.
Yeah.
But there is very little time, interest, or energy on my part or on the part of NAACP to waste with meetings when we need to build a wall. That wall is with voters who participate this election cycle. The midterm election cycle I talk about every week when I come on this show, where 88 state legislative bodies are on the ballot out of the 97 across the country, where if we turn out in targeted areas, we can impact the outcome of those elections so individuals will represent the needs and interests of our community. That's where the energy needs to be. And we ask people every week on this show and everywhere I speak to take a pledge and vote by texting 40649 NAACP. Text NAACP to 40649 so that we can change the conversation. And that conversation can only be changed with our participation.
Continuing our conversation with Derrick Johnson, President of NAACP. One more question this morning, Derrick, and we always appreciate you joining us these Tuesdays. The issue of gun violence, you all have spoken out against the Florida legislature and their decision. You've written an op-ed on gun safety as students prepare to walk out of schools tomorrow. What are your thoughts about students actually walking out of schools and the state of some of these gun laws? Even Trump has gone back on his promises. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, if you look at public policy and what has worked, look at the Australian model. Australia had a mass shooting in 1996.
Right.
They were aggressive. They changed the public policy. They have not had a mass shooting since. That the walkout tomorrow, we have a dynamic leader who's now heading about the Youth and College Division in Tiffany Lofton.
Indeed.
Chance, I would encourage you to have her on the show. She's been a part of a youth conversation. How do you honor and respect those who were murdered? In Florida, they're going to have a student walkout for 17 minutes to honor the 17 people who were killed during that mass shooting. But again, it goes back to public policy. Public policy is a new conversation if we don't deal with the power. And power is that a democracy is our vote. Either we have 1 million votes or $1 million. What side we going to follow? They have the millions of dollars, so we got to align our millions of votes, develop the necessary collective consciousness, and execute during this November election. So again, text NAACP to 40649 and take the pledge to vote.
Amen. And you're right. I agree. You do have a dynamic new youth and college director in Tiffany Lofton. We do welcome her. Derrick, folks, don't forget, text NAACP to 40649. Take the pledge to vote. Please, ma'am. Please, sir. Derrick, always, last thing I'll say, Derrick, it's really interesting that the NAACP led in court the Brown decision about schools, desegregating schools. And now, 60 years later, here we are dealing with whether or not teachers should have guns. I mean, it's just, I can't even imagine that generation of educators in that battle even imagining us getting to this point. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine? We're dealing with children being pushed out of school at 6, 7, 8, 10 years old for talking out in class, and now you want to give a teacher a gun in our classroom?
Yeah.
When they don't even have the temperament to address a child who may have had a bad day. Think about the student in South Carolina where the teacher flipped her out of her desk.
Yeah.
Or the young 6-year-old child in Florida where they called the police to harass her. And now you want to give these same teachers guns in our community?
Yeah.
It's no more than a marketing ploy for the NRA to sell more guns.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Text NAACP to 46049 to stay involved and take the pledge to vote. Our friend and brother, our comrade in arms. He is the president and CEO of the NAACP, the oldest, the boldest, the most cussed, the most discussed civil rights organization in history. Thank you, Derrick.
Thank you.
Talk to you next week. Good luck with oral arguments tomorrow, man.
All right.
All right. Take care now.